Everybody, welcome to the video. So we're breaking down the Monday Night Football Showdown slate between the Green Bay Packers and the Detroit Lions for Week 2 of the NFL season. And if the trends continue, each and every single primetime game so far this season has been excellent. I realize this game has an 11-point spread, but I'm hoping for the best here. Hopefully it's a good game fantasy-wise. I'm not sure if it'll be a super close game, but at least fantasy-wise, I think there's a lot of good options to talk about here. And if you do find this video helpful in any way possible, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. I've been all season long talking picks, strategy, allowance, amongst other things. If you think that sounds good and you're going to hang out for the rest of the season, you might as well subscribe so you get notified whenever I post new content. If you want to join the Patreon, you get access into the entire spreadsheet, projections, ownership projections, Discord community, and my optimizer link is down below for that. And last but not least, this video is sponsored by Prize Picks. I'm sure most of you know what it is by now, but if you don't, it's daily fantasy sports simplified. Just you versus the projections. There's no sharks, 150 max contests, or salary cap restrictions, or anything like that. Just you versus the props that they offer each and every single day. And as of right now, for new signee over on Prize Picks, you can use code CPEN to get a free money bonus. There's an instant deposit match up to $100 when you tell them I sent you. But I think that'll be it for the plugs for the most part. So without further ado, let's dive into today's video. As always, we'll start with the quarterback position. And up top, we have the man Aaron Rodgers, $11,400 coming off his MVP season. He was terrible in his first start versus the New Orleans Saints. Only had like 130 passing yards. He was only at 4.8 yards per attempt. Just looked very bad all around. No touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Got pulled at the end of the game. Jordan Love came in. It was just a very bad day for Aaron Rodgers and the Packers offense in general. They could not get anything going whatsoever. But there should be brighter days ahead here. They're playing at home in Lambeau where they always play better football. They're facing Detroit, who has one of, if not, the worst defense in all of football. Lost their starting corner, Jeff Okudah, last week. I believe it was a torn Achilles. One of the worst graded corners in all of football last year. So now with him being out as a starter, the backups, I mean, this is going to be a very poor pass defense that he is facing, and Rodgers should have no problem at all carving them up and bouncing back in a big way here. And I don't think it's a question whether you want to roster Aaron Rodgers or not. I'm pretty sure you're going to. He's going to be one of, if not the highest owned player in the entire slate right up there with Devontae Adams. I think it's just a question of whether you want to captain him or not. Personally, I lean the flex spot. We usually see the captain being a quarterback in the optimal lineup around 10 to 15% of the time. So I tend to lean pass catching options or even running backs or tight ends. It really just depends. I usually go defense or kicker. If that happens, I mean, whatever. You take the L in that slate, but it is what it is. I'm not saying I won't have any Aaron Rodgers captain lineups. I think there's definitely a strong chance he could throw for over 300, 400 yards and get 4 to 5 touchdowns. That is certainly possible versus this defense. It was dead last DVOA versus the pass last season and second to last in fantasy points allowed per game to the quarterback position and close to 300 yards allowed per game. And they're facing Aaron Rodgers, who is one of the absolute best quarterbacks in football. I'm not sure how much he cares these days, but he's still going to be on the field. Then dropping down to the other quarterback in this game, we have Jared Goff at $10,000, who will probably find himself in a similar game script as he was last week versus San Francisco 49ers. He's an 11-point dog on the road here in Green Bay, and they only have a team total of 18.75 here. So I'm not expecting a lot of points to be scored from the Detroit Lions, but they could surprise us. And I wouldn't say the Packers defense is all that great. They're definitely a lot worse versus the run than they are versus the pass, but they did allow Jameis Winston. There were several touchdowns last week, and the Lions are on the Saints level this year, but I definitely think there could be a lot of garbage time opportunity here for Jared Goff, and at that price point, he's definitely someone I probably will play in the flex spot for my main lineup, and especially for playing cash games. I think the best way to go is to probably get both quarterbacks in, because Jared Goff should throw the ball a ton here, and his pass catching options outside of TJ Hawkinson are quite cheap considering Tyrell Williams is going to be out for this game. So those guys are going to get a bump up in usage. They're going to allow us to fit in the studs in the slate like Jared Goff, Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, and Aaron Jones, depending on which way you want to go. Moving on to our lineup here, like I was saying, I'm leaning towards a pass catching option in the captain spot. So I think the best way to go is when we go to the flex spot, just start off with Aaron Rodgers and Jared Goff. Get those two quarterbacks in. They both have pretty high floors. Both are in decent spots once you consider the games here for Jared Goff. I know the matchup's a little bit tougher versus Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers gets one of the best matchups you can ask for versus the Detroit pass defense. So I realize these guys are quite expensive. And if you do go this route, you're only left with $7,100 per player. And you got to keep in mind using a captain. And guys like Devontae Adams, Aaron Jones, TJ Hawkinson can get very expensive very quick in the captain spot. So we're going to have to find some value, but fortunately enough for us, with Tyrell Williams being out, plenty of dirt cheap pass catching options for the Lions that do correlate well with Jared Goff, make some things work up top tonight. Moving on to the running back position, we'll start with the Packers group here. And just looking at terms of snap counts last week, it's going to be a little bit mixed up because they were getting absolutely blown out, so I would not say this is what we're going to see for the rest of the season, as Aaron Jones saw less than 50% of the snaps, A.J. Dillon around 30%, and Kylan Hill right around 25%. Now, we're not going to see that distribution, assuming the Packers aren't getting absolutely blown out here. Now, they could be blowing them out, and we see maybe a similar snap share just because they're up so much, but I don't really think that's going to be the case here. Aaron Jones is obviously the RB1, A.J. Dillon right behind him, then Kylan Hill should have somewhat of a role here, but at $200, he's an absolute pump play, but I would not really recommend it. My projections have him as a massive value, but that's only with like a 1 to 2 point projection, which yes, he's going to look like a great value at $200, but that's not something I'm really counting on. For me, it's between Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. The problem with Aaron Jones, I think he's a fantastic play. This is a great matchup versus Detroit. I think this is a big bounce back spot for Aaron Jones. An 11-point favorite at home, which usually bodes very well for that home running back. And looking at last season's metrics, this is one of the worst run defenses in all of football. They allow the second most points per game in the running back position, and they're 27th DVA versus the run. There might be some offensive line issues for the Packers, but Aaron Jones should have no problem whatsoever having a very solid game. The only problem I'm having here is that he's very expensive, and I already like Devontae Adams, I like Aaron Rodgers, I like Jared Goff, and I like some other guys too, and I can't play everybody, unfortunately. So Aaron Jones right now, for me, is the guy I'm leaving off between the big three spin-ups for the Packers. That's not to say I don't like Aaron Jones. It's just while building this lineup, I'm probably going to leave him off. As for A.J. Dillon, I think he's a fine play. He is only $3,000, kind of like a Jamal Williams type role that we saw in seasons past. If you want to take a shot on Dillon, I don't mind that maybe he gets into the end zone. He's only $3,000. This is a very good matchup. And if they are up a lot, we could see a lot more A.J. Dillon and Kylan Hill at the end of the game. So you got to keep that in mind. But these guys are purely tournament plays. And as for the Detroit running backs, last week they probably saw their ceilings in terms of their usage in the passing game as they combined for 20 targets and 16 catches. And I don't think we can expect DeAndre Swift to carry a 20% target share and Jamal Williams to carry a 16% target share throughout the entire season. Now, game script-wise, this could be a game where they put up similar numbers, although I think 20 targets is definitely pushing. I think DeAndre Swift could probably get like 4 to 6. Jamal Williams maybe in the same range, around 4 to 6, as they should be trailing a lot in this game. They are 11-point dogs on the road. DeAndre Swift played around 70% of the snaps last week. Jamal Williams close to 40. No other running back saw a snap. These are the two guys you want to own, and both are actually going to be somewhat viable plays. Jamal Williams is in a revenge spot here versus his old team in Green Bay in Lambeau. DeAndre Swift is just the more talented running back between the two. As a running back, this is a good matchup. The Packers are 28th versus running backs last season. They allowed nearly 6 catches per game, and with them trailing, Jared Goff dumped the ball off a lot last week. It's less than 6 yards per attempt, so we could see a similar pattern here this week, and if they throw the ball a ton, we could just see a lot of dump-offs, and that's excellent in PPR scoring sites like DraftKings. As of right now, I don't have a strong lead on any of these running backs, so we're just going to bypass the lineup as for right now, and then we're going to move on to the wide receivers. Then moving on to the wide receiver position, there is a lot of good wide receivers to talk about and a lot of viable options, especially for cheap on the Detroit side of the ball. But up top, we have the man, the best play in the entire slate, Devontae Adams, $11,800. He's the most expensive, but I think he is worth every penny. I don't see how he doesn't smash in this matchup versus the Detroit Lions. They have nobody in their secondary whatsoever that can stop Adams. They let Deebo Samuel for nearly 200 yards in week 1, and obviously Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers should be able to carve them up. I know week 1 was not good whatsoever for this duo. They should be able to bounce back in a big way. And like I said, they lost their starting corner, who was not very good anyway. Obviously, the rest of that group isn't anything scary. And last season, they were dead last DVA-wise versus the passing, allowed the 3rd most fantasy points per game to the wide receiver position. So the trio, Devontae Adams, MVS, and Lazard, are going to be viable options. All played around 70% of the snaps last week. I know what you're thinking, that's probably a little bit low for Devontae Adams, but you got to keep in mind they were getting blown out, so they didn't play the entire game. But all 3 are going to be elite options here. Just take your pick on whoever fits the best in your lineup. Moving on to the Detroit wide receiving group, these are the guys we're going to need for some value on today's slate. So they don't have Tyrell Williams. He played 42% of the snaps last week. Obviously left the game with an injury. So when you take him out of the equation, we saw Khalif Raymond play 75% of the snaps. He's $4,400. Amon-Ra St. Brown played around 65% of the snaps. Trinity Benson, only $1,000, played 53% of the snaps. And Quentin Cephas, $3,800, played 35% of the snaps. Yeah, there's a lot of value to be had here. We have pretty much the wide receiver one in terms of snaps below 5K. We have Quentin Cephas, who's definitely going to be an option at $3,800. If we look at their target distribution last week, we saw Khalif Raymond with 4, Quentin Cephas with 6, also had a 30% market share of the team's air yards. He's going to be your down the field threat. Amon-Ra St. Brown saw 3 targets, and Trinity Benson, again, only $1,000. Saw 6 targets last week. So as far as cash games go, if you're looking for that absolute punt option that's going to be on the field for the majority of the snaps and get targets, Trinity Benson, I think, is your guy on this slate. So moving back over to our lineup, like I've been kind of hinting at, I want to go with a pass catching option in the captain spot. And as of right now, I'm just going to try to absolutely get up to the very top with Devontae Adams, because I honestly think he's got like 200 receiving yard, 2 touchdown upside in this game. Now, could he flop? Sure, I don't think that's going to be likely, but he's my highest projected player. So I'm just going to plug him in the captain spot and just soak up all those points because he could absolutely blow the top off of this slate. So once we plug him in, like I said, things get a little bit short very quick because you only have $3,600 left per player. So we're going to have to use some of those cheap wide receiving options on the Detroit Lions to be able to make this work. And like I just got done mentioning, we have a guy that played over 50% of the snaps last week and had 6 targets in Trinity Benson. My projections is one of the absolute best value plays in this slate. So we're going to plug him in, which does free up some salary for us. We now have around $5,000, which definitely gives us a lot more breathing room. And moving on to the tight end position, we have one of the best tight ends in football in TJ Hawkinson at nearly $10,000. Does feel a bit expensive, but he did have 11 targets last week. You got to keep in mind, though, all the targets for the Detroit Lions were very inflated last week due to the fact Jared Goff threw the ball nearly 60 times per game, although we could see that happen again due to the potential game script that Vegas is projecting for this game, as they are 11-point dogs on the road, and they should have thrown the ball a lot. So we had 8 catches, 11 targets, very close to 100 yards, and they should see the lion's share of the targets here in this offense, and I would be very surprised if he does not get into the end zone. I just have a good feeling about TJ Hawkins in the box tonight, so we'll see if it happens, but he is very expensive. I think we're going to be able to afford him in the lineup that we are building, but in other lineups, I would really like to try to get exposure to TJ Hawkinson, especially when I'm rostering Jared Goff, because I do think he's going to be the wide receiver 1 in this offense tonight. As far as Robert Tonyan goes, he is very touchdown dependent. Only had 4 targets last week, 2 catches on 8 yards. Usually if Tonyan does not get into the end zone, he is not going to be a viable DFS play. And at $6,400, I'm having a hard time laying in too much Tonyan just because of the price point. I feel like I'd rather get to some of the cheaper Packers wide receivers like MVS or Allen Lazard, as they are similar price points and a little bit cheaper. And I feel like their ceilings are a little bit higher, not quite as touchdown dependent as Robert Tonyan. As for the defenses, I hate talking about defense. If you want to roster one, go with the Packers at $5,000, although they are quite expensive. And I am rostering a lot of Detroit Lions players, so I'm not even really rooting for the Packers defense here, so I'm hoping this is going to be a bit of a shootout. Obviously, I don't think the Lions are going to win this game or really keep it all that close. Looking for a lot of production from some of these cheap options on Detroit. I'm not really thinking the Packers at $5,000 are going to correlate very well with my lineups, even though they're massive favorites at home. And the Lions defense, no thank you. I would feel pretty comfortable rostering 0 of the Lions defense on this site. They're going to have to get a pick 6 or something for it to work out. I just do not see it happening, and they have a 30-point implied team total against them, and they're on the road in Lambeau, which is one of the toughest places to play as a road team. And as for the kickers, they are what they are. If they hit their field goals, they hit their field goals, and they become decent value plays. And if they don't, well, you're out of luck, because these guys have pretty much no upside outside of that, because they cannot throw the ball, run the ball, catch the ball, or score touchdowns. So you were left with a very low ceiling, a decent floor though. Usually kickers are going to score some points. I had to pick between the two. I'll go with Crosby, because there should just be plenty more scoring opportunities for the Green Bay Packers. The problem is, though, I think they're going to score a lot of touchdowns, so we might just see a lot of extra points out of Crosby on this one. And the Detroit Lions might have to end up going for it a lot on 4th down later in the game, so probably won't get a lot of field goal opportunities for Austin Seibert either. Filling out the rest of this lineup here, we have about $5,000 per player. And one thing I forgot to mention is that Cleve Raymond is technically questionable for this game. We'll have to see if he plays or not. If he is out, I mean, Trinity Benson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, going to be even better value plays in this slate. So we'll just have to wait and see. Even if he is in, they're still all good value plays with Tyrell Williams being out and the potential game script that we have. So there's just something to keep in mind. So as of right now, we can just plug another cheap wide receiver for the Detroit Lions. I think that might be the best way to go. We could go with Cleve Raymond, although since he is questionable, I guess we'll just kind of hold him off here just in case he happens to be out. So we could go with a guy like Quinton Cephas or Amon-Ra St. Brown. If you happen to go the Quinton Cephas route, that leaves you around $6,100 per player, which is kind of in no man's land, because then you have the backup quarterbacks. You could go with MVS here, $5,600. Obviously, he's a deep threat. You have Allen Lazard there as well. So if you just go the MVS route, that leaves you only $500 left remaining. I don't think that lineup looks too bad. You got Adams, you got Rodgers, the 2 quarterbacks there with Rodgers and Jared Goff, Trinity Benson, Quinton Cephas, and then MVS. So you pretty much got all the pass catching options for both quarterbacks. I don't think that looks bad whatsoever. If you go even cheaper with Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's only, what, $2,400, who should see similar volume to the other guys. You have an extra $2,000 to play with, which could get you a guy like Jamal Williams if you want to. He's definitely going to be involved. Should see double-digit touches in this game. Should see a handful on the ground and a handful through the air, and that lineup doesn't look too bad either. And if you want to fit in all the studs in this slate, you could throw in a guy like Trinity Benson, Quinton Cephas, or whatever in the captain spot. So if we just want to see what happens if we put a guy like Benson in the captain spot, I wouldn't say it's my favorite way to go. But if you just want to get crazy in tournaments and fit in every stud in the slate, you still can't fit in every stud, but you can get a lot of studs. So we can throw in Aaron Rodgers, we can throw in Devontae Adams, we can get Jared Goff in still, we could probably get TJ Hawkinson in, and we'd still have $5,700 left, which we could get MVS, and that's still a pretty loaded lineup. I know Benson in the captain spot feels ugly, but if he can get a handful of targets, get like 50, 60 receiving yards, that's not bad at $1,500. And then you have Adams, Rodgers, Jared Goff, Hawkinson, and MVS on your lineups. And the thing is, you could even fit in Aaron Jones probably if you don't want to go the Hawkinson route. Because if you throw in Aaron Jones, you have $4,100 left per player, which is right there with Allen Lazard. So that's $100 left on the table. So there's many ways you can go in this slate. I think it's a very fun showdown slate, as there should be many paths to victory. But with that being said, I think that'll be pretty much it for the video. So I hope it was helpful, and if it was, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you want to take that one step further, become an official member over on Patreon. Link is down below in the description for that if you want access to all the extra content. And don't forget, this video was sponsored by PrizePicks, just you versus the projections. And as of right now, if you're new signing over there, you can get a free money bonus up to $100 when you use code CPEN and tell them I sent you. I think that'll be it. I will stop rambling. I wish you guys the best of luck on Monday night.